Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sparking Success. Today we have a special guest on, CJ Karchon. CJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. CJ owns a couple businesses in the local area here, the Auburn Hills area. So let's read this off real quick. So the first company we're going to talk about is IET. It's a prototype stamper and sheet metal fabricator in Auburn Hills, Michigan, stamping a variety of low-volume automotive parts for OEMs and other Tier 1s. It's a family business. CJ is the president of IET and oversees the Auburn Hills location. He also owns and operates a few other businesses, Cammenga, Night Vision, and Glow Rhino in the defense and firearms industry, all in the Metro Detroit area. We'll get into that a little bit today, but again, welcome, CJ. It's good to have you. We've worked together on and off throughout the years, and we've never actually got the chance to meet, so This is cool.
This is great.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is a great facility you guys have here. I love the studio. I didn't know you guys were as close as you were to our location, actually.
Well, yeah, hopefully this will be the start of a friendship, and we can do this more often. So I know that Fletcher, our CRO, had connected us, and it's like, man, you got to have CJ on. Like, I'm going to work on getting that done, and so here we are.
Very cool.
So I'd like to start. I just wanted to hear a little bit more from you about the story of IET. I think that was the first of the businesses that you became involved with, and just walk us through that story. I know it's a family-run business, but it sounds like that's evolved and changed for you over the years. So I'd love to start there and then just see where the combo takes us.
Yes, definitely. So basically, my dad purchased the basic stamping operation in 1999, and he had done software and some other things. And I went to business school. My cousin also went to business school at Indiana.
Okay.
And we were looking at jobs in investment banking and becoming a lawyer for my cousin. And that was in 2008. And there weren't a lot of those jobs around.
Yeah.
So to buy some time and maybe help my dad out, we said, could we come spend some time at the shop and help you stamp some hoods out and some doors and fenders? And he said, yeah, of course, no problem. And, we never really wanted to work for him. He's a pretty tough type A guy. And so we're loading presses and, taking parts onto the laser and hanging out with the quality guys and in CAD design. And, in the afternoons when the shifts were over, we would go back to the front office, and my dad would take us under his wing and tell us about the lawyer conversations he had, or the conversations with outside accountants or other customers, and get our opinions on it. And we have an open discussion, kind of like we're having here. And so we learned the business from the ground up. We learned about being, entrepreneurial, and having, this larger manufacturing operation was a great, to have that tutelage was invaluable.
Yeah. So you're kind of learning on the floor, but then also learning all the behind-the-scenes operations of the business as well.
Yes, because it's not just, let's stamp out some parts. There's a lot that goes with, manufacturing operation, but more so a small business where a lot of people are wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah, that's one thing that's consistent, I think, in any business, small business especially, is like there's a lot of different things going on to execute, pulling it off, and to ultimately start to grow it. It's not just whatever the main, product or service is. There's a lot of other behind the scenes work that's getting done. So
definitely,
man, that to me, when I hear that, that's invaluable, experience that someone's getting, just being able to be exposed to kind of all aspects of the business or most of the business.
For sure. We're very fortunate in that opportunity.
Okay. So that started in 2008. Interesting, because I got into recruiting in October of 2007.
Okay.
And so I wonder if this is similar for you. We've talked about this on a couple of our episodes, but I came into the industry at that time and, just kind of had my head down and was making placements. I was doing engineering, staffing at first.
Sure.
But you would hear from people, like I worked for a pretty large, company, like right out of, I was still in school, but that's where I learned.
Okay.
And you would hear like, oh, how things used to be. It used to be better, like all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't really know any different. And, I'm seeing a progression and I like what I'm doing. And, I was doing like backbreaking labor, before. And I'm like,
Sure.
hey, like working hard at a desk is working hard and it's more like mentally, taxing.
Definitely.
But it's not like what I was used to doing where I'm working 16, 20 hours a day, sometimes in a truck and just like drenched in sweat and
Sure.
banging up my hands and all this. Like, I'm like, I can do this. Like, I'm grateful for this, So, but did you have any similar experiences where it's like you heard stuff like that, but it was like your first experience, or you're just like, well, what?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the timing of our joining IET was fortuitous, and that it was a tough market with the recession and everything. But it was a good thing because we got to see what not to do.
Yeah.
And when things, when stuff hits the fan, so to speak.
Yep.
The people that were the companies that were over levered, or they bought too much equipment and they had these crazy interest rates, and they got a little bit over their skis.
Yeah.
And the business dried up, whether it's automotive or defense or whatever industry they're in. All of a sudden, you can't pay the debt service back to the banks, and the banks aren't your friend when
They're going
times
to
are
come
tough.
knocking then.
So a lot of companies were calling in their notes, and so long story short, my cousin and I learned like how bad things can get from the beginning of our careers.
Yeah.
So that our mantra continues forward today, which is slow, controlled growth. We don't want any of this hockey stick stuff. You see on the news these crazy startups out west and billion overnight. Great, that's not us. We just want slow, controlled, steady growth.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what comes tomorrow. It might be a global pandemic that breaks out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially this year with elections and
Yeah,
all that, we don't know what's coming.
You never know.
So I think we just released a podcast last week talking about navigating like uncertainty and everything.
Okay.
It's just like the general theme is you control what you can control.
For sure.
So, okay. Well, yeah, I found a very similar experience. So I didn't own my first business until April of, or actually May of 2009. So a little bit later in some of the, like, I think it was bad, but some of the aftermath had already happened. And like, we were even a product of that. Like, my partner at the time was laid off and I left the company that we were with shortly thereafter. And then, we started out, but we had, we didn't have any money, but we also didn't have any debt or, any, like
Sure.
we were just able to kind of see what was going on and participate in kind of the rebuild. And I don't know if you guys saw it similar, but by mid 2010, we were pretty, the news wouldn't tell you things were kind of on the uptick, especially in Detroit, Michigan.
Sure.
But like we were picking up projects left and right by halfway through 2010 where people were kind of they were getting projects, right? But they also were probably a little timid on how they were going to make capital investments as it comes to labor. So they use variable labor. And next thing you know, we were exploding as that kind of, continued up. So I don't know if you saw something similar. Like you guys had an established business at that point.
Yeah,
so
we
a little different probably.
We did a little pivoting ourselves in the automotive, in our prototype stamping world. We benefit from the OEMs having new platforms rolling out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that all stopped.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times we're only as good as our next purchase order. And so we pivoted and got into the military stuff. So we started doing defense projects and doing reverse engineering with some of these prime contractor parts that were out there. And that really stabilized us during a tough recessionary period.
Yeah, I think that's what. So some of our first contracts in 2010 in this area that got busier. Like we did have some auto programs on some things, but a lot of the companies, specifically in the prototype sheet metal stamping area, were doing some type of defense, fabrication, usually on like armor plates or
Yes.
things like that. So hearing you say that, it's like, yeah, like that's what I recall seem to get the ball rolling for some of these people, the ones that had those contracts in place.
Sure.
So
Definitely.
okay, and I would think this might be my lack of understanding because it only goes so far, but the way I try and explain it to someone that's like maybe not from the Metro Detroit area is, well, the engineering talent in auto and the skilled trades talent is strong here compared to other parts of the country. And specifically as it relates to, the automotive industry, well, what's close to that? Military ground vehicles.
Sure.
And so there's a lot of transferable skills or just facilities that, you're going to say this better than me, but you do like some general retools or just reset some things up or use the same equipment, and you can go out and do these programs as well. Is that?
Sure.
Would you agree with that?
That's accurate. There's a ton of talent here, lots of equipment, of course. There is a switch in understanding on, some of the parts we do are Class A surface. You don't need things to be Class A surface on the military side. The weld requirements are different. The metals you're working with are different. You're going from aluminum to, this armor.
Yeah.
Trying to bend a big piece of armor is definitely a different challenge. And volumes. So our stuff is prototype, low volume for the, when we're doing automotive stuff, but in the military space, it's considered production. So the volumes were right in our wheelhouse for what we were already capable of. But yeah, there's definitely a learning curve that was associated with that. Further, how they issue purchase orders, how you get into their systems, gauge codes, networking through different trade shows to find, prime contractors that are subbing out work. It was a concentrated effort, and we did okay at it.
Yeah, that's we'll have to talk more about that probably off camera because we've positioned ourselves. We've added a lot to our defense and aerospace sector, and we're set up with cage codes and some of that stuff. But we're trying to navigate, I think, deeper into that world, and there's some things holding us back on that. So I'll have to pick your brain off camera
of course.
on that. But I was laughing a minute ago when you were talking about the different types of metals because it just took me back. It was probably, I don't know exactly when, but in 2010, and had an opportunity to do some welder openings, and it was with Invar. Like that was the metal I believe that's a metal, right? Am I saying that right? Or it's like a high nickel.
Yes, we don't work with that,
Okay.
but
You're familiar with it?
I am
though?
familiar. Yep.
So, long story short, we figured it out, and we still worked with this client today. But I sent through, and I think part of it was they were just starting to hire again, and they're like, "Well, we want to see everybody, right?" But
Sure.
sent through 32 interviews to get our first 2 hires, but they were appreciative that we stuck with it.
Sure.
But that was a learning experience compared to like stainless steel or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was just laughing because I remember literally being at when we first started, I was working from my parents' kitchen table, and I'm making calls on these spots, and we were striking out quite a bit, but we figured it out over time.
Sure. Yeah, you can be a 300 hitter, just strike out 7 times and hit your 3.
That's the name of the game in recruiting, and I think business in general.
Sure.
Okay, so you got your start with IET in 2008. Can you walk us through progressions to current day?
Sure. So, we started to get into the military stuff and add equipment and building out the IET capability and growing personnel. We were able to acquire because of the recessionary period that it was, and the banks were getting impatient with their clients. We were able to acquire the military's compass manufacturer, and that was on the west side of the state. And we were able to bring it over here, get a whole new workforce, and prop up that operation, and then eventually grow sales and get into military contracts around the world with that compass.
Okay, and that is Cammenga.
Cammenga, yeah.
Okay. So what year was that you guys?
That was in 2009, 10 timeframe.
Okay.
And the compass had been around since 1992.
Okay.
So long run with that. it was challenging to change some of the policies, and then also create a whole new workforce and new workflow and a new building.
That's what I was thinking about. Is like, okay, if you guys move it over, probably makes total sense long term. But in the process of doing that, there's probably a lot of hurdles that had to be jumped.
For sure, things that would make your blood boil, reliving it. But totally worth it. We were driving over there, 2.5 hours each way for a long time, getting used to it. Then eventually we made the full move physically over. It's not like you just get a car and then turn it on and it works. Like we had a lot to do, and while still serving our existing customer base, including the United States Army.
Yeah, which was probably pretty demanding.
It was demanding. Yeah. So it was like you build up over there, you build up a bank, and then hopefully you get things running, and then work parallel paths with the same operation. But that lease was running up, and it was a whole thing.
So there's a timing, trying to stick the landing out.
Yes, and you're never going to be perfect, but if you can do your best guess, hopefully you're more accurate than that.
Okay, and then, one of the reasons Fletcher thought we should connect. I mean, one in general, we've worked with you guys over the year, and it's always great to actually do this. It's kind of crazy because like at one point, I knew every single client, and I don't always get to do that anymore. And I probably need to do a better job of that, specifically here locally, on like figuring out a way to do that. Well, this is part of the reason why we wanted to do this, so we could just have conversations like this. It's
a great format.
But so where did what he had said, because we have 7 companies now within our portfolio, and we started with one, Spark Talent.
Sure.
And then over, that we had our 10-year anniversary last November, so we're coming up on 11 years. And in 2021, we merged our first company together. So we didn't acquire this other company. We basically created a new entity and took all the business from this one entity and stuck it in the new one. And then over an 18-month period, all the business that we were doing out of Spark Talent, we moved over into it wasn't like a light switch thing. We moved it over, phased it over, which had its nuances, but actually really proud of the team and everyone involved because it went relatively well. Well, now fast forward another 3.5, almost 4 years, and we have 7 companies within the portfolio, and some of those have been other things where we merged and kind of did the same thing, and then we've done some organic ones. So he's like, man, you got to meet CJ. And then I'm looking at, I knew of, the other, I know some of this stuff, but I haven't got to have a conversation with you on it. So, and I didn't realize it's Glow Rhino, and then the other one is
Night Fision.
Night Vision.
Yeah, Vision with an F.
Vision with an F.
Probably got a little too clever with that name. But.
So, but those were organic starts essentially.
Yeah,
right?
Those were startups.
Yeah, so I guess love to hear a little bit more about that. I would assume it's a launching point for that is IET's continued success has probably been a part of making those things happen.
That helped for sure because that helps with some of the financial challenges.
Yep.
And then making some of the parts that we didn't have set up in the other operations in Dearborn. We could just have our buddies over at IET, us, make them.
That's right.
So that helps. But that being said, they are totally autonomous locations. We have general managers at all locations. That really that operation is their baby. So that frees us up to be able to do other things.
Yeah,
which is what we were able to do.
It's great. That's very similar in that, like, EJ, who's with us, behind the scenes today. Thanks, EJ. Hi. He operates Bolt, day to day, which is our media company. It's the only company in our portfolio that doesn't do some form of workforce solutions, but it's doing media for all of the entities. And then they have an external arm that started earlier this year too, where they're supporting other clients, mostly here in Metro Detroit. But, we don't have, I'm not running all 7 of these entities. They would fail. It would be diluted. We wouldn't provide a good service to everybody, or at least be watered down. No, we have someone that's their responsibility. It's their baby. They're involved from an equity standpoint, and they get guidance. And we have one ops team which helps create some leverage. But it's their responsibility as the operator of that company to grow it.
That's great.
So
It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to scale.
yeah, I mean, anytime I've talked, like, if I hear from someone that's like, yeah, I'm CEO of 6 businesses, it's like, well, okay, like I work a lot, but I know from mentors and other people that have some form of similar setup to us, one consistent thing where it's successful is that, you don't have one person running the day-to-day on multiple entities.
It's impossible.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so can you walk us through a little bit more, like, behind the scenes of those companies starting organically?
Sure. Yeah. So with the acquisition of the Compass company, it came with a huge barrier to entry in this license to use a radioactive material of an isotope of hydrogen called tritium. Tritium is innocuous. It's not like you're gonna go create a bomb or anything like that, but it is highly regulated. Its benefit in a product is that in conjunction with phosphorescent powder, it glows, and it's self-powered glow. So for this, specifically in the compasses, for low light navigation and the soldiers to be able to navigate in low light conditions, we have 7 tritium vials in the compass, in the dial, the cup, and then above and below the sight wire. And they glow, so soldiers know where the heck they need to go, even if it's dark. So anyway, so that was a huge asset or attribute of that acquisition. And so we said, what else can we do with this stuff? We have this license with the federal government. What do we do with it? And we offered it as a service. So there's companies and there's exit sign companies that have tritium in the exit sign. So if there's a power outage or something, it's glowing and people can get out of that building. Tritium is used in a lot of watches, like high-end watches. You'll see phosphorescent watches. They need an outside charge up before they can glow. Or obviously you got smart watches.
Is that what the glow is? And like if you get that green glow and like
a lot of the green ones, if it's flat, it's just a phosphorescent powder. So it's like a paint, and that needs to charge up. Whereas if you see like the raised vials, like a cylindrical, almost like a part of a toothpick that's on the hours, that's tritium, and that's in a glass vial with tritium gas. It's hydrogen to the power of 3. And those electrons that bounce around that glass vial excite the phosphor powder that's also in there.
Yeah.
And so that glows. And so soldiers have it in like their Luminox and their military watches, so they can also read time when it's low light.
Gotcha.
So we started offering that as a service to companies who have brands that do exit signs and watches, but also gun sights. So like pistol sights for a police officer when he's trying to line up a shot onto a threat. And if he's going into a dark warehouse, oftentimes he can't aim properly the pistol, even if he's done a lot of training. Yeah. So tritium, in conjunction with these iron sights, it glows, so it creates these dots. Picture like the end of a cylinder, and it creates these dots. So you get 2 dots in the rear, 1 dot in the front sight, and you line them up, and that way you're aiming at the threat and not, an innocent bystander or whatever. So we started offering that as a service. It was going well. We said we're in Metro Detroit. We have a machine shop, metal fabricator operation in IET. Yeah. Let's just make a better night sight for recreational shooters, but police officers, soldiers, etc. Have our own brand. Jam pack it with tritium. Come up with some IP around how the light collimates, and let's make our own brand. So we started Night Fision about 7 years ago, and it's we've been very fortunate. It's been growing every year, and now we're working with big OEM firearms manufacturers directly. Okay.
I want to say, I don't want to go any place you don't want to go, but I think I have it because I have a knife from you guys from Glow Rhino.
Sure.
Little plug. I think EJ is going to get some video of some more products. Really cool. I think I have it on one of my sites on one of my SIGs. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I noticed it
P365
from
or P320?
yeah, yep, that's what it is. So
365.
I noticed it from here at first. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's the same.
It is the same stuff.
Yeah, and is that you guys then?
That's not us. SIG has their own.
Gotcha.
Their own jam.
That makes sense. That would make
They're
sense. That they
they're
would
very vertically integrated.
Yeah, that would make sense. So okay, but same type of
Same thing. We're buying from the same supplier.
Yeah, and that's I could see where because like
Our sites are better though.
there you go.
100%.
So, but so police can't have like a red dot or anything on their guns,
They
right?
can. More and more departments are picking up the red dots.
Okay, they are.
So here's the thing with red dots.
Yeah.
They fail. They're great.
Yeah.
I think they are the future.
Uh-huh.
But they fail. They fog up. They have battery issues.
Yep.
Maybe people didn't sight them in properly.
I just took mine off the other. Like we were shooting on Labor Day weekend, and my battery was out. Like I'm not like using it like all the time,
Sure.
right? Like so, I'll shoot it every couple months. It's working fine the last time that I had it on, and we pulled it out. I couldn't get it.
And
to
you were
turn
just
on.
going to a range to
Yeah, we were up at
around.
my father-in-law's property, but like, let's say it was the middle of the night and I needed it, for whatever reason, and all of a sudden that's not working.
that's a problem.
So yeah, but that's the one that has that on it. So
So we complement red dots. I always say.
Mm-hmm.
So your scenario right there, something goes bump in the night, your red dot for whatever reason the battery's not working.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to aim properly.
Agreed.
So we recommend backup iron sights. So the stuff we make. So add that in conjunction with your red dot. In the event something like that happens, there is a malfunction, or a lot of times it just fall off because people didn't screw them on properly.
Sure. Well, I mean, I fortunately haven't been in that situation where I've heard a bang or the alarm goes off and I'll go and check, but nothing that was ever serious. But
Sure.
I mean, when someone's in one of those situations, I'm sure you have some data on it, but like there's a lot going on at that point.
Going on.
Like so,
Adrenaline, everything.
you got something that's not working. Like you having a backup plan in place would make sense.
Got to have it. We have this cop, Illinois, and he had our sites as backups. We really put a lot of research and worked with pro shooters to create our co-witness selector. So one thing with these sights and the red dots is having those backup iron sights co-witness with it. So they're just barely in the window. In the event you have a malfunction, you have the tritium right there. And anyway, so this police officer had our sights on his duty gun, and he got in a shootout with a perp, and he gets shot, goes on his back, and this guy's coming out of this cop car right at him, and his red dot, I won't tell you the brand name, fails, and he has our sights, pop, takes the guy down, and it saves his life. He writes us this whole thing and says, "Thank you."
Man.
And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Thank you for your sights. They saved my life, 100%. And we're like, that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's fantastic. And then eventually went, public domain, and you get the body cam and the squad car cameras, and we watched the whole thing. It's crazy. But I showed my people that. It's graphic, and I was like, you guys, if you want to, you can, but I want you to realize when they're sitting there building these sites by hand, putting the tritium in and being very careful, the quality matters so much because someone's life relies on that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the compasses too. Like, okay, it's a compass, sure, but if someone's lost in a bad part of the world and we're off 4 degrees, it matters a lot. So oftentimes I'll get testimonials just organically. They'll, a soldier or someone who retired or whatever will send me a story, or I'll see them at trade shows and they'll tell me something very unique. And I try to capture that and let the employees know because it's your Monday and you're coming in there and you're a little tired because you watch the Lions game and you've got to make sure that dial is balanced properly because if that's inaccurate or tritium's busted on somebody's backup iron sights on their gun, like they might not be going home to mama that night.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's always important to try and tie back what you're doing to a bigger picture or purpose or impact. And clearly you guys got a great opportunity to do that within what you guys do. So
Sure.
Wow. That's I didn't know that story. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So I change of pace, somewhat, not completely, but us being big in recruiting, and I was preparing, and I saw that you had mentioned kind of like a skills gap and how to close that with the youth. And being that we do a lot of skilled trade staffing, engineering staffing, specifically on the skilled trades end, it's clear as day that there's like a ever-growing problem on the demand for talent in that area.
Sure.
And so what are your thoughts on that? What are you guys doing to combat that? It's always something I'm interested to hear from.
It's a great question. Yeah. We don't really have as much of a problem on the night vision, or we can get to the glow Rhino stuff later, just because it's not as much the skilled trades as it is repetitive light assembly.
Yeah.
On the IET front, it's definitely a challenge, and prototype stamping specifically is not what I call button pushing. You can't just set any Joe up to push a button, because there's a lot of art form that goes into making and forming a metal stamping. And so that you got to have that balance of the youth and the experience. And our goal is always to get the youth trained up with under the wing or the tutelage of someone more seasoned. And a lot of times those more seasoned, some of our guys have been with us for 20 years, a lot of those guys, they like teaching. They like to show someone else. And there's not as much like looking over your back, or are they going to take my job? Because they know that the future is needed and the youth is it. What we have found with keeping the engagement level of, beyond a, nice benefits package and financially and all that, 401k or whatever, it's keeping their brain engaged. So switching them up and having an open dialogue. So, all right, you're in the machining department. You've been machining, you've been cutting dies for 6 months, maybe 8 months. How's it going? Oh, it's going great. Is there anything else you'd want to do? You've learned that. Would you want to run, this mill? Would you want to get trained up on this? And we have guys that bounce around a different operation. So a guy from the machining department will go over to the fab department, learn how to weld, learn how to qualify a part, or they want to check out the press department. Okay, well, you're going to do a little internship, but you're going to have a stint over in this department. And because I found, even if they're really good at something over something else, if they don't like it, it's a ticking time bomb for when they want to either leave you or find some other shiny object. Because I think the youth, they need some sort of constant something new, right? We're always on Instagram looking for that new thing. I think they need something new to challenge themselves, and if they like it, then they'll really try to learn it more, and then you finally find that slot that they'll probably be in for the long part of their career.
I think that's a good, just my opinion. It's a good way to get people to appreciate other people's parts of the.
That's a great point.
It's just, we have little wrinkles of that, and it's like a big thing for us is like we want everyone to be a recruiter. Like in some, like even our sales, like, oh, I'm in sales. Like, yeah, well, okay. Like to sell the product the best, we want you to at least know how to do the recruiting process.
Sure.
Or a lot of our roles do both. A lot of them do. And the reason being is so that you can kind of keep your pulse on how to do that skill and provide a great service as it changes. But it's also to give some perspective to the other side and what they might be experiencing.
That's a great point. That perspective is very important, and the contrast of you kind of get rid of the grass is always greener thing too with it. Yeah. It's like,
we do our job, but they don't do their job. It's like, well,
this stuff. Yeah.
Why don't you go spend a couple months, days, whatever it is, in their shoes, and like everyone just kind of gets more of an appreciation for different parts of the process.
I totally agree.
So, I like the other part. What I heard, that we try and do is, you're trying to attach someone to something like just, a mentor and student scenario where it's like just attach one person to the mentor's hip and let them be learning on the fly,
Sure.
from them. Easier said than done, but
Of course.
what we're always trying to do, in some capacity is that, like, hey, how do we do that? Because the better we do that, we're setting ourselves up with a better foundation long term to continue growing how many people know how to do this fundamentally right.
Definitely.
So
totally agree.
Cool. So I got us away from Glow Rhino, but I want to hear about that.
Oh, sure. So, kind of along this, we have this tritium thing and this, unique isotope. As hobbyists, we would put it in our, keychains, and then we'd machine out a little cavity in our knives and stuff. And we said, why can't we offer this to everyone? In the gun sight space, people do that. So we started creating new applications for tritium. So having it in a knife, you drop and lose when you're, hunting blade, when you're field dressing a deer. People lose knives all the time because by that time it's low light. Being able to locate your knife in a glove compartment or in a go bag, etc. And it's just also cool.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we put it into zipper pulls and keychains and other things where people are losing their keys all the time. We have a glass breaker tip on there. So, what are you going to have on you if you get into a car accident and 911's not there and you can't get out of your car? You're going to have your keys on you. So having a glass breaker tip on there so you can get the hell out before the jaws of life make their way out there is invaluable. And so we now we're going to Blade Show and these other knife shows, offering that insertion service to other knife companies because in that we have like that first mover advantage. But it's a niche. I mean, it's definitely a niche of niches. But we're creating it, and so far so good.
Yeah, I love the product, and I think was that other knife Glow Rhino?
That is, yeah. That's our first fixed blade hunting knife called the Boar.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna check that out after we get done.
Yeah, for sure.
EJ was messing around with it. Looked like a pro at that thing earlier. So we're messing with EJ a little bit. So you did good, man. Okay. So you mentioned something else. I'm just like, as I was looking at the notes, and Fletcher's like, man, like, you guys are a lot alike, I think. And I was seeing some of it in the notes, but I feel like we kind of already talked about it a little bit. But I think that the note says, without going back and reading, about being scrappy in business, and just kind of rolling up your sleeves and getting stuff done is how I take that. But
sure.
What does that mean to you? With me, that resonates, and I know that's been a big part of us growing our businesses. Sure. So I'd love to hear what that means to you.
Yeah, scrappy is realizing, this isn't Ford or GM or name the Fortune 500,
sure,
whatever company.
Yeah.
We don't have all the resources in the world, especially when it's a startup and not a startup that any VC's investing in. It's just, all right, we got our own money and we'll throw in limited.
We're
funds
investing in it.
We're investing in it, and we need to start generating income now. We can't be in the red for 5 years and then hope that later one day the unicorn thing happens.
I hear you.
So it's all right. So you want a logo. I don't have an on-staff graphic designer. So what do? Well, you look for 99 Designs or Fiverr or Upwork and these types of resources, and go there and figure out a good way to ask for what you kind of want. You find that balance of letting the artist paint, but telling them kind of what you're looking to do, and then getting that output, having that done with brochures, business cards, creating a website. I don't have an on-staff website company. If you go locally, stuff's expensive. It just is. They're used to these, crazy automotive prices. So I can go overseas and get the basic form started, and get a website on Shopify or WordPress or whatever. Learning those platforms. I think there's economic ways to start a business out that were never there before, 10 years ago even. And so that's what I mean by scrappy. And if you don't know this stuff yet, you just got to learn it and just jump right in. I think that's the biggest thing to answer your original question. You got to realize you don't know everything and just jump in and you'll figure it out. Yeah. You'll make some mistakes, but just keep adjusting.
Be resourceful.
100%.
Yeah, I think something I've had to learn as we were growing is like how to grow, like as the company grows, how to grow as a leader. And part of that is learning how to not lose that as you start to have, some forms of success. Like we have a long way to go, a lot to work on. Like we have a lot to improve on, but we have, done some cool things and made some advancements. And, in our first couple early surges of that, I think I struggled with, like we had that mentality and we were very frugal and, just all this kind of stuff. Like when I started out, I started in a plastic table and plastic chair when we got our first office finally. Like we were frugal. And I think I saw some benefits from that, like over time. Well, then you start adding to the team and, we continued to progress and had some other surge points. And I struggled with, we just kind of like, I wasn't as mature on how to look at things financially. Like we just kind of looked at like, are we over this bottom line number? If we are, let's keep putting the pedal to the metal.
Sure.
That produced some great things within our growth. But it also, I was actually just talking to one of our finance guys this morning about this, but it also, when we experienced, a little bit of a lull in that like COVID time period, right? Like it worked out okay for us, but it could have been more painful than it needed to be.
Okay.
Had we not, won some big projects pretty quick and kind of recovered by June of that year.
Okay.
Like some of the things we had done with our operational expense outlay and like we were a little fatter than maybe we should have been. And it bit us a little bit, but not as much as it should have. But we had an opportunity to learn from it, right? And it's like, well, wait a minute, like, why did that happen? Well, it's like you started to go down a path of getting away from like forcing some, just because we can do something doesn't mean you should.
Sure.
And then, saying yes to everything just because we're over our number. Well, yeah, but what happens if things do compress at all?
Yeah.
And then you still have this operational outlay that could cause some issues, especially the more you're doing it at scale.
100%.
So it was a lesson in that. And now, what I try and teach all of the operators within the business is like, look, there's going to be periods like we're not going to buy ahead on stuff. Like there's always context to stuff and there's exceptions to rules. And you do got to make some investments. Like us buying this building and like we're a lease, we lease, within the building. Like we own the building, but we also lease within the building.
Okay.
And I have partners that own the building with me. And what did I really bring to the table on being involved in owning the building? Well, it's really what we own from a lease standpoint.
Sure.
Like that's what it wasn't my real estate acumen. Like this is my first real estate deal.
Sure.
So it's a cool one.
You learn as you go.
Yeah, but I'm getting to learn as I go. I'm learning a lot. It's actually the biggest one that they've done as well, which is cool.
That's awesome.
Well, what do I actually bring to the table? Well, it's our business in here growing and leasing up more space. So we took a calculated, risk within that. Now but we knew what we were doing with that. Well, in a lot of instances, I'm like, no, like I want you to get in the scenario where we're having to sprint, like, and we can see that it's going to be an extended sprint, and then we need to make the move. Like, so it's going to get uncomfortable for a little bit.
Sure.
Instead of just giving every like convenience, boom, boom, boom. No, like, hey, we're going to need 6 more people if we win this contract. Well, okay, let's win the contract. Put a good timeline in the SOW of 30 to 60 days, depending on what it is. And we have enough horsepower where we'll either hire, the staff up. We're a staffing company. We do this for other companies.
Sure.
Let's do this internally.
Be able to do it, yeah.
So we're going to do that. And then we can borrow from other teams that might be slower and then backfill those if we need to. And
that's great.
So since we started to do that, well, our profitability has gone up quite a bit because we're no longer getting out ahead of ourselves. I'm just giving one example, but there's probably 50, where we would just like get ahead of it. It's like, no, like win the business or, have that scenario happen and then do those things as much as you can.
Sure.
So I don't know if you've seen that, but like, to me, that's my mentality now of how we kind of stay scrappy and roll up our sleeves and like, hey, like we're still like we're gonna work. You're not just gonna point and tell everyone what to do. That doesn't line up with our core value of leading by example.
Sure.
Isn't just the way, it's the only way. Like part of it is you need to show your team that you can still get out there and do this. And there might be a period where you have to do a little more of that, and it's going to be a sprint.
Sure.
And then we'll readjust. So
well, I also like that, just don't lose that hunting mentality.
That's it.
And then if you don't have the internal resources to be able to, whatever, field dress that hunt, you'll figure it out. It's like go get the line, and then you'll figure it out after that. That's great. And the scrappiness, I think, is a cultural thing too. I think once it's in the company, being frugal on decisions, and you delegate power to individual managers and stuff. I think they make better decisions on their own, just knowing, all right, well, maybe I won't do that flight combo. Maybe I can do the layover or whatever. And all of a sudden, it goes to the bottom line when everyone's making good decisions like that.
Yeah.
But it cuts. I did have this recently where it cuts both ways. We use a lot of glues in the light assembly operations. Silicones and acrylics and all this stuff. And we have one key glue that we use more than all of it. And we didn't have enough of it for, a period of like 2 months. And we could buy a year's worth, and it's really cheap in comparison to the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. And you're going to use it.
You're going to use it. It's not perishable. You're going to use it. And the person in charge of it just was saving a little bit. So we were out of glue one day, and it was, we got to pay the big premium to get it from Grainger or someone, because we can't be out of glue.
And that's where
it bites you in the butt the other way, right?
And that's where there's nuance to this stuff. There's always exceptions where it's like, I thought there's exceptions, right?
Yes.
And there's things that, but there's a situation. It's like, well, if we know, when we look at like my thing with tools or inventory or, whatever it may be, is like, well, how it sounds good, but are we going to use it? Or how are we going to use it? Or how do we know?
That's great.
And so, not that we're perfect on that, but that's what I'm trying to we have to, we don't have inventory like that in our businesses, but a lot of it for us is like, if we have like annual, like this is pretty easy, you would think, but like annual payments, well, we have good cash flows. We run the main business with no debt. And something I'm proud of, because it's not easy to do within the staffing world, because you're outlaying payroll every week and not always getting paid until 30, 45, 60 days plus in the auto world.
Sure.
So it took time to do that. But, man, in an instance where, like, I don't want to pay any financing on, some insurance or, situation, or I want the best price. So if we know we're going to use the tool. Now, don't sign up for a 5-year deal on a technology that's going to change, every 6 months. Like, we'll pay more. Like, we really only want to sign 1-year contracts for the most part. But we got a couple break points on like, hey, this technology we will do a little bit longer, right? Because we get a better price. We'll pay up front. We want the discount. But are we going to use this tool in 2 years? Well, we've used it for this long. It's still our number 1 tool, our number 2 tool. Like, let's make that calculated bet that like and take the discount. But yeah, like we'll have like, we did this month to month. Well, why did you do that? Now we're paying is there a prepayment? Because let's wipe that out,
Sure.
But just stuff like that.
Yeah, they're all individual decisions.
Yeah. So that's where the nuance comes in. I think, can be like it's like, man, like, why did we do that? Like, we're trying to do it for the right reasons. Okay. Like, well, what can we learn from this? And how do we look at it more, a little bigger picture. And a lot of it comes back to use and execution. And I don't know. It doesn't always feel fun in the moment, but that's part of what keeps doing the same thing fun.
At some point, it's paralysis by analysis. You're like, all right, let's go.
Yes, exactly. So cool. Well, CJ, anything else you want to cover? Or?
No. I appreciate you having me out. What we got going on is a unique situation. If you would have asked me in 2000s what I was going to be, after that, wouldn't have thought making military compasses and car parts, etc. But life's just funny like that. You figure out what you can do, and hopefully you learn stuff every day. Get well rounded as much as you can.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. We'll have to have you back.
Sure, whenever.
My goal with some of these in-person ones is like a year, 2 years. Like business moves fast, right? But to have people come back and then be able to not just go through their whole story again, but hey, let's talk about what's changed and transitioned and grown worked, not worked within the business. That's kind of our goal and vision for this thing, is be able to have people back and have like ongoing conversations with them.
Very cool.
We'll have to talk about that and get together more, but it's nice to finally meet you. And we ask that if you enjoyed the episode today, please like, share, and subscribe. If you could, leave us a review. And again, if you found any of this interesting today or helpful, just please, we ask, share with one other person. Thanks and have a great day.